9-13, your Super Bowl 60 champions. Fair to say, sleepless in Seattle as the celebration is on. Postgame here on HQ is presented by Trimfaya. Joe Musso pleased to be alongside the guys. Ran Carthon, Damian Harris, and the future Hall of Famer Patrick Peterson, here to break down what was pretty simple to see. I mean, these are men who have lived their lives in the game of football, and this was 101 stuff. Can you run the ball? Can you stop the run? Can you rush the passer? Can you protect the quarterback? The answer for New England was no to many of those things tonight. The pressure that Drake May saw, how indicative was it of what the Seattle group is all about?
I think it was everything. I mean, what we've come to know the Seattle Seahawks team as, the defense, this fierce group that just gets after the passer. They get after you, they pressure you until what do? You make a mistake. And what did Drake May do? I mean, he played as competitively as he could against this defense. Granted, we could pick apart. He could have moved in the pocket a little bit more. There were a couple throws that he missed, right? But he was still out there battling. But what does Seattle do? They hit you, they run to you, they fly to you until eventually you make that crucial mistake. And that's what happened towards the end of the game. That was the backbreaker for New England, giving up those interceptions toward the end. But again, this was a masterful performance by this defense in terms of stopping the run, getting pressure on the quarterback, being locked down in the secondary. I mean, what did New England's receivers do all game? And they have a lot of talent in that wide receiver room. I mean, it was all a credit to the Seattle defense. And Sam Darnold, I mean, it's a great story for him. I'm glad that he got himself a Super Bowl and righted his career. But, man, he has got to be so thankful for this defense because time in and time out, this is what they do to the other team.
So many storylines to unpack, and we will do so here over the next hour. Rand, we talked about the left side of this protection plan for Drake May, but pressure came from everywhere. What did you see up front in their inability to sort it out?
Well, it starts with just the mentality, right? Imposing your will on another man and forcing them to tap out. And that's pretty much what this defensive front did all game. We came into the game, and Pat Pete put it nicely about having two rookies on the left side of that offensive line. And they were going to now have to not only win their one-on-one battles, but be able to communicate and pass off those games. Well, Morgan Moses has really struggled throughout the playoffs. We hadn't talked about it enough, but Morgan Moses has struggled throughout the playoffs, and he continued to struggle. I like what Seattle was able to do. If you go back and you watch them all, you watch all the pressures, you watch where a lot of the sacks came from, when they wanted to run their pressure package and run games and put them in a bind, they came off the right side of the offensive line, which put Morgan Moses in a bind. And so you talk about what did this defense do? They just imposed their will.
Yeah.
That's what this game was about. Imposing your will on the man across from you and forcing them to tap out.
Pat, I want to recall a line that you often brought up this season. Say, Drake. That's been your go-to this season. And as Damian put it, only so much could be asked of the quarterback under siege in this way. But the preparedness, or maybe the lack thereof early on in this game, how did you see it bear itself out over 60 minutes? The comfortability or lack thereof, how much of that was the moment and how much of that was the collapsing pocket?
Honestly, I believe, I won't necessarily say, it didn't look like the moment was too big for him, but it looked like the Seattle defensive line was too much for his offensive lineman that was protecting him for the most part. But Drake never seemed comfortable the entire game. He had happy feet the entire game, wasn't able to get his feet set. And when young quarterbacks get hit early and often, their eyes tend to come down. They don't see the whole field or go throughout their progressions as they should, and that was some of the things that came to a head in this ball game here. Wasn't able to be protected throughout this game, was never comfortable, and receivers was not able to create any separation throughout this entire game.
We're tested in a way in this one that they had not been tested throughout the season. Now is no time to look back as a recollection of the lack of teeth to the schedule. Instead, the prowess of this Seattle defense throughout this 60 minutes of football. It was coupled with a very, very effective rushing attack by the Seattle offense. You didn't have to do a whole lot knowing what that defense was going to be capable of, but how's 27 for 135 Ken Walk running to this moment, the biggest moment of his career, and we called it a feature back moment for him, Dame? The patience. You likened it to a legendary back that we've seen time and again before, but patience in this moment is something completely different.
Yeah, I mean, just to run the ball the way that he did in this type of moment, with that type of confidence, that type of poise in the backfield. I mean, people are going to look at me crazy. People are going to think some type of way when I say this. He looked like Le'Veon Bell tonight. It looked like the game was moving so much slower for him than it was for everybody else. I mean, the creativity in the backfield. like I alluded to earlier in the show, before the game, his ability to see a hole over here and you think that's where he's going to hit, but next thing you know, he's on the other sideline because he's just so creative with how he ran the football. And in a game where Sam Darnold wasn't the best player on the field, having that run game to take some of the pressure off of him, take some of the pressure off of JSN because he didn't play that well either. I mean, Kenneth Walker was the heartbeat of the Seattle offense the entire game. So just to be able to run like that, have that type of confidence, I think he gained that confidence when Charbonnet went down.
You said the entire game, the entire playoff, he was averaging 120 yards, per game for the most part.
And I think that, again, whenever Charbonnet went down, they had mentioned it on the cast about how he took ownership of that and saying, listen, if it's going to be on me, I'm going to make something happen with it. And to your point, Pat, he's done that the entire playoff. So I think capping the Super Bowl off the way that they did, I mean, he would have loved to have had that long touchdown run stand. But holistically, the way that he performed tonight, that just caps off a magical playoff run for him.
Pat, pregame we were talking about which team could stay committed to their game plan long enough. How important was this run game in allowing that to be the reality for Seattle? They really never had to put Sam Darnold in that position of pressure that he was put in the NFC title game, to be able to run the ball so effectively and control the paces of this game. What did you see in that?
I mean, Damien hit it on it earlier about Sam Darnold really did not have to do much for the most part the latter part of the season and and definitely throughout the playoff because the defense was putting his teams in short field. Kenneth Walker, we just got done talking about, averaging 120 yards per game. So he was pretty much at ease throughout this entire playoffs and throughout this Super Bowl because he didn't have to do much. He really wasn't called upon to make those key third down throws or, bring his team from behind. And when the quarterback's playing like that, stress-free, you're going to get those results that we saw here tonight.
And I will say this, Sam Darnold is not concerned with the why, just the what. And he is a Super Bowl champion on his 5th franchise in his 8th year in this league. It is storybook stuff. He didn't have to throw the game-winning touchdown down the field. But he was that calming force for this football team that looked calm, cool, and collected in every moment, including that NFC title game. How much was Darnold the pulse of the Seahawks?
I think 100%. He was that missing piece, which is why they went and paid to him the money that they did to bring him into this franchise. And we see that tonight with him winning his first Super Bowl championship. But you talk about, Dame talked about he didn't have to be the best player on the field. He was 19 of 38 on the day. I believe he threw for 202 yards on the day. So that's 50% completion percentage. He did what he needed to do in moments, right? Because there were a lot of passes that we were like, whoa, and we talked about that at halftime. But again, throughout the latter part of the game, you saw his escapability. We saw him pull the ball down, make a guy miss in space, and get a key first down. He played how I've said Drake May has played all season.
Yeah.
I don't care about the stats. I just want that dub. That's all I care about. So however that came, we saw Drake May in the AFC Championship game have more rushing yards than passing yards, whereas you saw Sam Darnold, he wasn't concerned about the completion percentage. I need to just make the right throws, live to see another day, and if I need to pull the ball down and run, I will do that as well. So he did whatever this team needed him to do tonight to win the football game.
And now, like when you finish med school and you insist to be called Dr. Rand Carthon, well, he is Super Bowl champion Sam Darnold, no matter the means.
Put some respect on my name.
Certainly so. Ring me as Sam Darnold gets it done. And this wasn't a limp there. This wasn't a find your way to wins. This was emphatic in the way they went about their business. 10 consecutive victories to end this season. Only the 4th team in NFL history to do that. They also collect 7 wins this year against teams with 12 or more wins in the regular season. This is domination, but in a different way, Dame. How do you define the dominance of this Seattle group?
You define it by the way that their defense plays, first of all, because that's the identity of this team. And they try to do that on offense with Kenneth Walker and the way that they run the ball. But the name of the game in Seattle is speed, physicality, and meeting force with force. They're not afraid of anybody. Nobody's going to walk into there and push that defense around. That's not going to happen for a long time. And then with the way that they run the football, again, whether it's physical or finesse, it keeps you out of long yardage situations on 3rd down. It keeps pressure off of Sam Darnold. And then it lets guys like Cooper Kupp, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, they just go out there and play ball. They just roll the ball out there and they just run routes. So this is the identity of this team. McDonald's, in his second year, he built the foundation last year, didn't necessarily get to the playoffs, but again, in year 2, getting to the Super Bowl, building, that just shows you the type of impact McDonald is having in that locker room, the belief, the buy-in, and then obviously the physical, fast style of play. Like, this is going to be a team that we're going to talk about for a while now.
I'm glad you bring up the timeline there, because I want to go to our GM and talk about roster construction, because this was sort of zigging when others zagged. It's all about going to get the hot young offensive mind. Seattle gets a Shanahan stopper, a McVay stopper, if you will, in McDonald to get through that division, which they do, and now they're here. But the way that they've drafted and developed that talent over these 2 years to get from one of the worst defensive teams back to that, they call it the dark side, but Legion of Zoom is what I like. To get to that level of play in a 3-year span, what does that say about the belief in constructing the roster?
So, I mean, John Schneider is one of the longest tenured GMs in our league currently. I believe it's Mickey Loomis is number 1, and then somewhere in there is John Schneider and Les Snead of the Los Angeles Rams. But what Schneider has been able to do, and if you go back and you just look at the way this roster is constructed, he made similar moves in building this team, the dark side, as he did building the Legion of Boom, right? So you start with draft picks. They spent a lot of draft capital in the secondary, being able to draft those guys and develop the guys in the secondary. And then you look up front. The up front is a mixture of draft picks, trades, and free agent signings. You get Ernest Jones in a trade. You trade for Leonard Williams. You sign Owosu. You draft Derek Hall. You draft Byron Murphy. And it's a mixture, right? It's a mixture, and it's putting rookies and veterans together at all levels, and then just allowing the coaching staff to put their imprint on it and develop the talent.
John Schneider becomes the first general manager in NFL history to make multiple Super Bowls with completely different rosters. No pieces from that on this. And once again, a Super Bowl champion, the second time in franchise history. And here is the representation of that stat we uttered earlier. Wins against 12 or more win teams as their opposition 7 times this season. Now, much of that a construct of playing your way through the NFC West, which was the toughest division in football this year. But man, oh man, the Seattle Seahawks leaving no doubt in Super Bowl 60. Plenty more on the way here on CBS Sports HQ postgame presented by Trimfaya. We've crowned a champ, but we're just getting started. We take the talk back out to Super Bowl City, Santa Clara in a bit.